What's up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new quick win. I promise today's video is gonna be really quick, and we're gonna focus on the splash screen because you can do it the boring way or you can do it the Lottie way. And we're gonna do it the Lottie way with Capacitor today. Because in the past, we already tried to use this plugin with Cordova, that worked quite nice, but we didn't have a config XML with Capacitor and the plugin wasn't ready for Capacitor, but now we found a way to make it work. And we're gonna set up a blank project, add a Lottie animation, and see how we can configure that Lottie splash screen using Capacitor. If you want to check out the source code, link below the video for all Ionic Academy members, and if you're not yet a member of the Ionic Academy, go check it out right now, ionicacademy.com, my place to help you with everything Ionic. But now, let's dive into this, and without further ado, roll the intro. Alright, let's get started with a new Ionic application. For this, I'm just gonna picking the list template because we're not really interested in whatever is in the application. So the list actually has some data. Then we can dive into our application and install the Lottie splash screen plugin. Now, at the time of writing this, there was an issue. So there was a fix, a pull request, allow events like Lottie animation start to fire when used in a Capacitor project. And it is not actually a little fix to use these, it actually otherwise crashed. I think especially inside Android, I think for iOS it might have worked. Nonetheless, I had to install the Lottie splash screen plugin from this repository, from the pull request. Now, in the future, if you take a look at this pull request and it is merged, you can simply go ahead and install npm install Cordova plugin Lottie splash screen once again. Pretty sure it will actually be merged when this video goes live. Now, once you get that in place, you can also run the first Ionic build and add the native platforms for iOS and Android, and then we can continue. Now, in order to set up this plugin, where is my file once again? I wanted to go to this again. Let's go to the plugin. In order to use this, we need a few things, especially we need a Lottie file. This Lottie file goes to a folder and then we specify for Lottie where this file can be found. Now, if you're using Cordova, this is usually done with the preferences in the config XML. And I'm going to show you how we can basically replicate this behavior using Capacitor. But before, let's do a quick search for a Lottie file. So I went to lottiefiles.com. And I picked this one because I think it actually looks quite cool. It's a little splash, so you can just click download and you want to download the Lottie JSON. Once you got that file, you can put it into your Ionic assets folder, and I got this here named Splash. You can name it whatever you want, it really doesn't matter, as long as we connect it in the right kind of way in the next step. So to do this, we will head over to our Capacitor config JSON. And the first thing we want to do is we actually want to set the default splash screen. I don't know why by default I still get a JSON file, by the way. I really like to have a default TS file for the Capacitor config in new Ionic projects. I really don't know why the templates still have the JSON file. Nonetheless, what we want to do for the splash screen is we want to set the launch auto really, that's what I meant. There's no code completion. I hate it. Auto hide to true. And at the same time, we want to set the launch show duration to 0 as well. So this is the first setting. The second, which is more important, is a block for Cordova plugins. And in here, we can specify different preferences or settings that our app might need. So we're going to go ahead with preferences. And then we're going to put in whatever kind of preference. Now, as an example, we're going to just put in Simon's key and set it to true. And we're going to see how this affects our application by running in our terminal npx cap sync. This will copy our assets to the native folders and update all the plugins that we used. And if you wonder why we are actually not using the Ionic native plugin for Cordova Lottie splash screen. Let me quickly explain why. If I check it out in here, so let me find Lottie splash screen, there we go. If we would install the awesome Cordova plugin Lottie splash screen package, which we could certainly do, we would have only access to show and I think hide. And there are actually more functions on this plugin. So if you check out this here, you're gonna see it has hide, show, on, and one. So you can also listen to events. And for some reason, this is not implemented right here. So if you're a good community person, you could now also create a pull request and add these functionalities to the awesome Cordova plugin Lottie splash screen plugin. Nonetheless, since they don't exist here, we're gonna go a different route. I just wanted to have this as a clarification. So let's do cap open iOS, and we want to check out where this setting actually went. And we just need to open app config, and this is pretty much a config XML. So whenever you're using Cordova plugins in your Capacitor project, Capacitor will automatically generate this file. And now we can find a preference here, Simon's key value true. And up here we can actually find our feature as well, which was added because we installed the Cordova plugin. Now, what this means is we can take another final look at this and see that usually it puts something like this in our config XML. So let's imagine we wanted to have something like preference Lottie full screen true in this file. How would we approach this? Well, we could change it in here, but that's not really a smart idea. Instead, we go to our Capacitor config and set Lottie full screen to true. And by doing this, we can now run npx cap sync again. And after the sync is finished, we should be able to see preference name Lottie full screen value true. And this is how we get the values that were mentioned here into our config XML, which you usually don't even have inside of a Capacitor project. And because of this, we can now also add more. We can, for example, add Lottie hide after animation end. So when the animation for the splash screen is finished, we want to hide it, true. And finally, we can even set the animation location, Lottie animation location. And this is now interesting. Usually we would specify something like assets slash, what did I call this? Splash.json. While this is true in a web project, it's not completely true in a native project, because in the native project, this is actually inside public assets splash. So we need to change this and make sure it is public /assets/splash.json. And then we're gonna have the right settings. Now let's run one more sync to update our file. And then we're gonna open the project. Okay, file. Oh no, not opening the loan screen. That's never a good idea. Config, hello. Could you please update? Yeah, it's sometimes, I don't know why, sometimes it just takes a second. And of course, my iPhone is disconnected because, yeah, that was very important. Most likely my USB cable. I need a USB cable. So, where's my iPhone? We could probably also just use this on anything else. Maybe we're gonna just use it on Android. Oh no, I got my iPhone, that's cool. We're gonna inspect Android in a second as well, because for both platforms we need some changes. So here's my iOS phone mirrored, and let's see if it already works. Black, oh, it immediately works. That is interesting. First of all, this is great. We have seen a Lottie splash animation in our Ionic application, but just defining a few settings here in the Capacitor config file. Now, in the past, I actually noticed that this didn't really work reliable on iOS. I don't know why it worked right now. So this is really confusing me. So let's give this another try, if it works on the second try as well. Because I did have a little fix for iOS that we could take a look at. And sometimes the installation just, I don't know, Xcode is really getting worse with the years. Installing to Simon's iPhone. Yeah, please do this. No, now you're busy. Yeah, let's see. Lottie splash screen and app opens. And well, it kind of works very reliable. Nonetheless, I'm going to show you what you could do as well if you want more manual control. For this, we're going to go into our app component, and usually if we would have used the implementation here, it would be cooler to use it. What we need to do now is kind of ugly, but it gives us more access. So let's create a new function, private async show splash. And then we're going to call show splash in the constructor. At the same time, we want to inject the private platform, so we can also wait for the platform ready event. Make sure you have no typo in there. And then call this dot platform ready. And we're going to await this, so we know that the platform is ready after this line. Now, I found that usually this setting only worked for Android, so you could have a switch in here if this dot platform is iOS, and just target iOS with some specific code. In that case, we first of all need access to the Lottie object, and this can be accessed from the window object. So window as any dot Lottie. Now, this is kind of really like the very old way to do things, but it works. We could also check and Lottie, because if it's not defined, we're gonna run into some trouble. And now we might wanna call await Lottie splash screen dot show and passing in our file. And I think for the second we need to pass false because that is the remote property. Now the problem is we don't have any kind of code completion here with this, and it's just a trial and error. So we would now go ahead and run Ionic build and npx cap sync. Actually, copy would be enough. Npx cap copy, but sync. I just like sync more. Where's my phone? There it is. But as we've seen, it kind of already works from the capacitor config. I just want to show you this in case it doesn't work like this for you. You should really inspect the output that you see here in the console. What we should see now is hopefully a new issue, because we're trying to manually display it and we see we haven't, oh, actually it came up down here, but the error that I usually got was error. An animation is already playing, please first hide the current one. I think this is because it is automatically playing the splash animation if you have set it up like this. So in case you want to do this and you want to have more control about it, you would run splash screen Lottie hide before calling the next animation. This is the code I used for iOS. For Android, it usually already worked out of the box, but let's give this code one last try for iOS and see how it affects our application. So now the app builds, the app comes up, splash screen, Lottie looks good, and there we are inside the application. So now everything just works fine on iOS as well. If you don't have problems and this setup automatically works for you, cool, then just get rid of this code. I just want to put it in here in case you encounter problems. Now let's also open Android, because yeah, this stuff is usually different for iOS and Android. So for Android, let me connect my device. There we go. Hello device, where are you? Hello, yes, please wake up. And there is Android Studio. Now, yeah, why should you? No, that was not a smart idea, Simon. No, if you plug out the cable, that's usually a bad idea. But that also gives me the chance to show you a command I recently installed, which is called screen copy. Pretty amazing. You can install it on Mac and on Windows, brew, apt, whatever thing, and then you run it, and it automatically connects to your device, and you can just use it here because a lot of people have previously asked how I get these previews. I usually use the Reflector app, but this is so much easier for Android. Just run the command, you see it's instantly here. All right, now let me deploy this. And what we see is I live in Münster. Yeah, that's for sure. Thank you for this information. No, it should hopefully deploy the application. And we see on Android, we got the same. Now, I've reused this project, and previously I saw an issue. If you use a new application, you might see the capacitor splash screen or the image before the Lottie animation, which kind of looks ugly. If you do that, you're gonna have to go to your resources folder and delete the splash screen folder right here. So this contains the default capacitor splash image. Just open it on one click. Why? Why is an IDE asking for 2 clicks? Just delete the folder right here. And after you've done this, view usage, and it is used in actually one file, and that is the styles XML. So you can find this in resources, values, styles, and here the background is used usually. So you're gonna have to remove that line if you want to safely remove these files. And if I do this now, it should run through because I removed this line. And now I wouldn't see the capacitor. I know we didn't see it actually, but at the same time, I'm not completely sure why we didn't see it, because I definitely did see it before. Okay, in case you wonder where our settings went, check out the XML, config XML, and you're gonna find those settings once again. Now, one more thing, where's the plugin? There we go. I know it's the forked repository, but should work for our demonstration as well. So at the bottom, they have something like a Lottie fade out duration, which is different for Android and iOS, how they use those values. One is taking seconds, the other is taking milliseconds. That is actually a problem. And to this day, I haven't found a good solution for this. The problem is we can add to our capacitor configuration this block, but if we wanted to have like a specific code for iOS and Android, we would need something like Android and then preferences. And then we would also need another block for iOS. So we would need a setup like this. And I've seen a setup like this with a custom script on GitHub, but by default, this is not working. So in case you want to use the Lottie fade out duration in here, be aware that this will create an entry in both your iOS config XML and as well inside the Android config. And because this file is regenerated on npx capsync, it's also not really a file you can manually change. Usually you can manually change the files in your native projects, but this is like one of those files you can't really change manually as it's automatically generated. Anyway, I hope this helped you to set up our Lottie splash screen. The block I added was not valid. So you can either manually control it from here. You don't really need the awesome Cordova plugin wrapper. You could also do it the old school way. It looks a bit ugly, but by doing this, you can also easily use the on function. So like in their code, you could do Lottie splash screen on, and then whatever on event. Like if you want to catch the Lottie animation end, you could do it like this and specify the callback and a function. And then you could run whatever kind of code you want when this event is caught. And I actually gave this a try. It definitely worked as well. Okay. Besides that, capacitor config, this block is mirrored to a config XML in your iOS and Android project, and you can use pretty much all the settings you can find down here in Lottie splash screen. You just need to set up the right file, and then you hopefully got an amazing splash screen. Alright, and that's it for today's quick win. I hope you enjoyed this information, especially about the part that translates our capacitor config file to the config XML in your native project. Yes, we still have the config XML even with capacitor, and that means we can basically use every Cordova plugin, and we can also define other variables inside the native plist or manifest file, so there's really no reason not to use capacitor. And as well, the Lottie splash screen worked on iOS and Android, as you have seen, and it allows us to build epic splash screen animations. If you want to support the channel, hit the like icon and definitely stay subscribed so you get notified about all the upcoming videos in the future, and I will certainly catch you next week once again. So until then, happy coding, Simon.